And we're going to continue on with our book we've been reading, which is the part 3, The Kingdom of Hell. This is chapter 22, Amusements in a Great City of Hell. This would just be part 1. I also put down in the comments section here, if you're on Facebook, a way you can go to and put comments if you're not on my YouTube live streaming, because I'm streaming to Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. But it'll be better for you to go to YouTube where you can write comments a lot easier. So now, just to sit back, Franchezzo was a intellectual, kind of upper class. He wasn't the nicest person. He was raised Catholic, didn't really believe. He saw too many things that went against his sense of fairness. But so he had a lot of bad characteristics too. He was kind of sarcastic and mean. But when he finally found the woman of his love of his life, then he died suddenly. And that just, he went down into the depth of the lower zone. And then she helped bring him back. She tried to talk through mediums and she brought him back. And this whole book so far has been him being helped by her. And now he's trying to do things and helping other people in the dark abyss. The Spiritism calls it the dark abyss. Of course, and so Franchezzo is doing really well. He's learning to love. He's not being sarcastic. All these type of things, right? He's not being vindictive, thirst for revenge. Although it's still kind of hard sometimes as he's doing these things. For he's in his hell and he kind of gets when he starts losing his calm demeanor and his love for his fellow spirits, then he becomes more vulnerable to these other spirits in his lower part, because he becomes denser, right? Because your feelings and your personality dictate your density of where you are within the spirit realm. But he's been given his mission. He's been doing extremely well. So let's carry on. Okay. This is chapter 22, Amusements in the Great City of Hell, Words of Caution. And we'll go, this to, okay. I proceeded but a short distance when I saw a faithful friend sitting by the wayside, evidently waiting for me. That faithful friend was like his mentor right there. I was truly glad to see him again and to have further guidance from him. We greeted one another with much cordiality. He was now, he said, appointed to accompany me during a part of my present journey, and he told me of many strange circumstances which had befallen him, which I'm sure would prove very interesting, but as do not properly belong to my own wanderings, I will not give any account of them here. So just to be, so faithful friend and he are probably spirits who are in the lower zone, but probably in an Apple's lower zone. They've been doing better and better. They've been studying, they've been working, they've been improving themselves, and now they've been sent on a mission down into what he calls hell. It's the dark abyss, to try and help as many people out of there. And this is the marvelous thing. This is how we have to remember that, when people call hell or purgatory, there's no such thing as eternal punishment. But Jesus is in control of everything. He's not just in control of heaven or earth. He's in control of what he here Franchezzo calls hell, or the dark abyss, or purgatory, whatever you call it. It's there for a reason. It's there for people to go, for them, not for them to be forever. Jesus Christ does not believe in eternal punishment. I know what he wants is he wants you to change your character and your personality. That's why we have multiple lives, because one life isn't enough for many people. Actually, hardly no one, right? No one who's all gotten from a primitive spirit to an advanced spirit in one life that I know of. It takes multiple thousands of lives, and could be hundreds of thousands or millions of years. So this is a long process. So don't ever get discouraged. We got a lot to go here. So remember, he sends Jesus and his army of angels, right? Sends sends these people down to help people that have now decided that, oh, I don't like this place because everyone treats me like I used to treat them. And they finally find out that that's not the way you want to be. So this is why hell has its place. And I should not call it hell. It's really purgatory, or the dark abyss is called in Spiritism. Everything's for edification. And why do we need such, this is pretty harsh things he's gone through. People being tortured and just horrible. But if you are refusing to learn, you're going to keep going down, down, down until it's finally the point where the lesson may sink in. You're only going to encounter these horrible trials because you're not learning from the easier trials. It's like when people have hard trials and tribulations in their physical life, and it happens probably because they didn't learn from an easier lesson that they were given, and therefore, if you don't learn from an easy lesson, you get a harder lesson and harder lesson. The spirit world is going to do what it takes to give you the necessary stimuli to analyze yourself and change your character and your personality for the good, to rip out primitive emotions and replace them with love and forgiveness and charity. Okay, I'll carry on. Faithful friend took me to a tall tower from the top, of which we could see all over the city we were about to visit. The view of it beforehand being, he said, likely to prove both useful and interesting to me. So there's this big city in purgatory. So there's organization. Why would there be organization? There's organization. It's not a nice organization. It's full of really terrible people, mean people, kind of, maybe like North Korea and Cuba, but it's organized. We were, as I said, surrounded always by this dark midnight sky and heavy smoky atmosphere, somewhat like black fog, yet different and not quite so dense, since it was possible to see through it. Here and there, this darkness was lighted up in some places by the strange phosphorescent light I have described, and elsewhere by the lurid flames kindled from the fierce passions of the spiritual inhabitants. When we had climbed to the top of the tall tower, which appeared to be built of black rocks, we saw lying below us a wide stretch of dark country. Heavy night clouds hung upon the horizons, and near to us lay the great city, a strange mixture of magnificence and ruin, such as characterized all the cities I saw in this dark land. A treeless, blackened waste surrounded it, and great masses of dark, blood-tinged vapor hung brooding over this great city of sorrow and crime. Mighty castles, lofty palaces, handsome buildings, all stamped with ruin and decay, all bleared and blotched with the stains of the sinful lives lived within them. And this again is a common thing. There's no real beauty. And there's even the people aren't beautiful. They may look at themselves and think they look okay, but for a spirit outside of them, they look, again, even the person looks kind of decayed and not very good, and there's really no beauty, because in the spirit world, your inner love, right, your inner personality always shows on the outside. Not like here in the physical world, where you can be this gorgeous or handsome person, or a woman, man or woman. You can just be this, but then, when inside, you're not a nice person at all. In fact, they've had in the books by Andre Louise, where he saw one time this beautiful woman goes in the bed, falls asleep, and then out of her spirit comes, and she looks like an old witch, right? Just kind of like the myths, right? I mean, you see where a lot of these things come from. Okay. Crumbling into decay and held together by the magnetism of their spiritual inhabitants, buildings that would last while the links woven by their spiritual occupants' earthly lives held them in this place, and would crumble into the dust of decay whenever the soul of repentance should sever those links and suffer it to wander free. Crumble and decay, however, only to be reconstructed by another sinful soul in the shape into which its earthly life of pleasure should form it. Here there was a palace there beside it a hovel, even as the lives and ambitions of the indwelling spirits have been interwoven and blended on earth. So were their dwellings constructed here side by side. Have you ever thought, ye who dwell yet on earth, how the associates of your earthly lives may become those of your spiritual? How the ties of magnetism which are formed on earth may link your spirits and your fates together in the spirit land, so that you can only with great difficulty and much suffering sever them? Thus I saw in these buildings before me the proud patrician's palace, built of his ambitions and disfigured by his crimes, joined to the humble abodes of the slaves and the parasites and panders of earth, which had been as surely formed by their desires and disfigured by their crimes, and between which and his palace there were the same links of spiritual magnetism as between himself and those who had been the sharers and instruments of his evil ambitions. He was no more able to free himself from them and their inopportunities than they were able to free themselves from his tyranny, toward till a higher and purer desire should awaken into the souls of one set or the other of them, and thus raise them above their present level. So it was that they still repeated over and over again their lives of earth, in hideous mockery of the past, impelled thereto by the past itself, their memories presenting to them over and over again, as in a moving panorama, their past acts and the actors, so that by no plunge into wild excess in that dark land could they escape the grinding of the memory's millstones, till at length the last lust of sin and wickedness should be ground out of their souls. Now, that is a perfect explanation of the purpose of the dark abyss of purgatory. Is you live your life. You've done these terrible things, and it's not just a person. It's not just like the head of the corporation has been terrible, or the head of the nation or whatever. It's all those little minions that gleefully went along with him and said, "Oh, I'll do his bidding and I'll be rewarded." And we've all been that even through corporations here in our earth, right? I mean, I've been in positions where I've been in charge of groups of people, and this is terrible. Like, this was GE, started by GE. It was horrible. Where every year you had to, and then other companies started adopting this. I think they do it in Amazon too, and other places. Every year you had to take 10% of the people that work for you, and you had to try to get rid of them and give them terrible reviews, because that way we just cleaning out the bottom 10%, it'd make you have the best people, which was just horrible. I hated it. That's why I hated that. And it's stupid, because if you're smart, you go, well, okay, eventually 10%, I'll have to be there sometime. And also, some of the people may not be as good. Well, they do other things that no one else wants to. So it's just this horrible corporate, lackeys, and will do anything. And I hated being that. That's why I just got rid of that, and I just became an individual contributor. And if they wanted to put me in the 10%, fine. They never did, but I wasn't going to help make people drink their Kool-Aid anymore. And that's just American corporate life. Think how it is when the old Soviet Union or China, the Communist Party, where you have these stupid things, or even the way it is in government in the United States, where these people are just doing these dumb things, and yet everyone, oh, okay, yeah, we all have to do it, and they all have to get on the bandwagon. And I remember one time a guy was explaining that what happens in any organization, it's like the fish ball, right? The bait ball, and the fish swim around this bait ball, and you don't even know what you're doing, but you need to stay within the group, and you don't want to stay in the middle of the group, because then you're not singled out for promotion. But if you're too far from the group, then you get eaten. And that's the way it is, human nature. They just want to do anything in order for them to get their wealth and power. Because in corporate America, and I'm just talking about that, you can make a lot of money. And if that's your thing, fine. I gave all that up because I couldn't be that type of person. But down here, in this great spiritual city, he says, you know, of past earth. Here is showing where, you know, you had either the dictator, the governor, or the CEO of a corporation, and all those little minions all trying to cheat people and be mean to people all together, and they all landed into this city in purgatory. This is what awaits people when you completely focus on material goods at the exclusion of any type of morality and spirituality. Now, I'm not saying you have to go wear a hair shirt or give all your money away. I never did that. I'm just saying you have to balance, and you have to listen to your conscience. You can't go and hurt people and still feel good about it. Sometimes you have to do that. Like I had, you know, years I had to make sure that the bottom 10% were fired, but I got myself out of that situation. Again, that's what you're going to have to do too. You have to get out of that situation where you're a member of an organization that is morally corrupt. It's not easy. Believe me, I understand it's easy for me to say, and it's harder to do. Okay, I'll carry on. Over this great spiritual city of past earth lives hung, as I said, patches of light of a dim, misty appearance, like faintly luminous smoke, still gray in color. This, I was told, was the light thrown off from the powerful intellects of the inhabitants, whose souls were degraded but not undeveloped, and whose intellects were of high order but devoted to base things. So that the true soul light was wanting, and the strange reflection of intellectual powers alone remained. In other parts of the city, the atmosphere itself seemed on fire. Flames hung in the air and flickered from place to place, like ghostly fires whose fuel has turned to ashes ere the flames have burnt out. And as the floating phantom flames were swept to and fro by the currents of the air, I saw groups of dark spirits passing up and down the streets, heedless or perhaps unconscious of those spectral flames that were thrown into the atmosphere by themselves and were created by their own fierce passions, which hung around them as spiritual flames. So thoughts become reality, and these passions and the primitive emotions, they will exist around the city. I mean, so this is what, you know, I don't like talking about purgatory all the time, but it's really kind of giving you the opposite. If you take what's happening in purgatory, where you have these people that are just into their own memory loops, and they're into their own, still their own base desires, and you see how it is. Now, you take that opposite, and you see where people who are loving, cooperative, fraternal, and just really nice people, that's heaven, right? Because you can tell it's in the juxtaposition of what heaven and purgatory is. Heaven is wonderful because you're working with people who you all like. They have your back. There's no malicious gossip. Now, you think that, okay, no malicious gossip. They think the best about you. That's how you want to be in the physical world. That's why we're here in this physical world, to train ourselves to be like that. As I looked and gazed upon the strange city of dead and ruined souls, a strange wave of feeling swept over me, for in its crumbling walls, its disused buildings, I could trace a resemblance to the one city on earth with which I was most familiar, and which was dear to my heart since I had been one of her sons. I called aloud to my companion to ask what this meant. What was this vision that I beheld before me? Was it the past or the future or the present of my beloved city? He answered, it's all three. There before you now are the buildings and spirits of the past, such that is as has been evil, and there have been among them are buildings half finished, which those who are dwelling there are now forming for themselves. As these dwellings of the past are, so shall these half-finished buildings be in the days to come, when each who builds now shall have completed his or her life work of sin and oppression. Behold and look upon it well, and then go back to earth a messenger warning to sound in the ears of your countrymen that doom that waits so many. If thy voice shall echo in even one heart and rest the building about one of these unfinished houses, you shall have done well. and your visit here would be worth all that it may cost you. Yet that is not the only reason for your coming. For you and me, oh my friend, there is work even in this city. There are souls whom we can save from their darkened lives, who will go back to earth with trumpet tongues, proclaim in the ears of men the horrors of the retribution they have known, and from which they would save others. Oop, went too far. There. Bethink you how many ages have passed since the world was young, and how much improvement there have been in the lives and thoughts of the men who dwell upon it. And shall we not suppose that even ordinary reason might admit it must naturally be due to the influence of those who returned to earth to warn others from the precipice over which themselves have fallen in all the pride and glory and lust of sin? Is it not a far nobler ideal to place before men the idea that God sends these his children, sinful and disobedient once, if you will, but repentant now, back to earth as ministering spirits to war and to help strengthen others who struggle yet in the ungenerated sinfulness of their lower natures, rather than believe that he would doom away to the hopeless, helpless misery of eternal punishment? You and I have both been sinners beyond pardon. Some of the good of the earth might have said, yet we have found mercy in our God even after the 11th hour. And shall not even these also know hope? If you have sunk lower than we, shall we therefore in our little minds set limits to the heights to which they may yet climb? No, perish the thought that such horrors as we have looked upon in these hells could be eternal. God is good, and his mercy is beyond any man's power to limit. And I think this is really, this is the what Spiritism brings to you, is the knowledge of reincarnation, of karma, and that you go through life after life so you can improve. And these books are written for people to read and go, oh, maybe there really is a consequence to my action. And of course, hopefully there will come a time when the people of earth will believe in karma and know that karma is real. Karma is a fact, and karma dictates how your next life is going to be, and it dictates where you're going to go in the spirit world. And your karma, good and bad, will be weighed. And when you pass over, you'll review your life, and then you'll be sent to where you fit with other people. That's called the law of affinity. And if you're one of these who are completely materialistic and went through life taking what they wanted, didn't care about other people, you will be in one of these cities. If you were the opposite, by many of the unsung wonderful people out there that just daily grind out their job, don't take advantage of other people, you will end up as if someone in heaven. In fact, I've told this over and over again. People who are famous on earth and then they die, and they think they're going to be famous, no. It all has to do with your spiritual quotients. In fact, one of the leaders in one of the cities in this purgatory, not in this city, was Pope Gregory, and I forgot which one he was. He went to heaven, and he thought, well, he should be treated much better. He was the Pope. He was like just the mouthpiece of God. And then he went straight down into purgatory and stayed there for quite a few hundred years. There's a great book called Liberation by the Andre Luis series, and it's the Chico Xavier. Really good book. Okay. We now descended from the tower and entered the city. In one of the large squares with whose earthly counterpart I was very familiar, we found quite a large crowd of dark spirits assembled, listening to some sort of proclamation. Evidently, it was one which excited their derision and anger, for there were yells and hoots, and cries resounding on all sides. And as I drew yet more near, I perceived it was one which had been read recently in the earthly counterpart, and had for its object the further liberation and advancement of the people, an object which, down here in the stronghold of oppression and tyranny, only provoked a desire for its suppression. And these dark beings around me were vowing themselves to thwart the good purpose as far as lay in their power. The more men were oppressed, and the more that they quarreled and fought against the oppression with violence, the stronger were these beings here below to interfere in the affairs and to stir up strife and fighting among them. And we're seeing that right now. We're seeing that this spiritual battle going into this earth as it is right now. I mean, it's just amazing that there are people who are these cultural Marxists who are trying to destroy the family, trying to destroy the law and order, trying to destroy individual responsibility. And they're doing this for a purpose. They're trying to keep everything chaotic and not let the earth advance to a plan of regeneration. There are spiritual forces out there that are trying to hold back the earth. This is real. The more men became free and enlightened and improved, the less chance was there that these dark spirits would be drawn to earth by the kindling of kindred passions there, and thus being able to mingle with and control men for their own evil purposes. These dark beings delight in war, misery, and bloodshed, and are ever eager to return to earth to kindle men's fierce, cruel passions afresh. In times of great national oppression and revolt, when the heated passions of men are inflamed to fever heat, these dwellers of the depths are drawn up to the earth's surface by the force of kindred desires and excite and urge on revolutions, which begin at first from motives that are high and pure and noble, will under the stress of passion and the instigation of these dark beings from the lower sphere, become at last mere excuses for wild butcheries and excesses of every kind. But these very excesses, a reaction is created, and these dark demons and those whom they control are in their turn swept away by the higher powers, leaving a wide track of ruin and suffering to mark where they have been. Thus, in these lowest hells, a rich harvest is reaped of unhappy souls who have been drawn along with the evil spirits that tempted them. So, this is why it's just so wrong, and it's not a good idea. These people who worship, Satan, and all these spirits in these lower regions, right, the dark abyss, they want you on earth to be as bad as they are. They want to sow confusion and chaos and violence. And then some of these people who worship Satan and Baal, they think that since they are helping foment chaos and violence, that when they go down to this area, they'll be rewarded. Well, no, they don't reward anybody. They'll just treat them as bad as they were before. There's no such thing as someone, oh, great job of doing evil, and we're going to give you a great decaying mansion. No, it doesn't work that way. They're just like you would think they would be. Their word is nothing. Their promises are total garbage. As soon as they can treat you bad, they will treat you bad. And if they can fool you, they'll fool you. This is really a group of people with primitive emotions and just completely selfish. As I stood watching the crowd, faithful friend drew my attention to a group of spirits who were pointing over at us and evidently mediated, addressing us. I shall go, said he, for a few moments and leave you to speak with them alone. It will be better to do so, for they may recognize me of having been here before, and I'd wish you see them by yourself. I shall not, however, be far away, and will meet you again later when I can see that I can help you by doing so. At this moment, something tells me to leave you for a little. As he spoke, he moved away, and dark spirits drew near to me with every gesture of friendliness. Of course, now he said, now, this faithful friend says, yeah, something tells me to leave you for a little. So that was another spirit. These spirits aren't set here and say, okay, you go on this mission into this hellish city. They're always connected. There's really no everything's connected by thought, and therefore the spirits can be anywhere they want in heaven or whatever. They can see what's going on with this person. They can. It's amazing. It's a logical connection. It's a logical construct of hell is, right? It's like these people are in this environment, these parameters are set, this is all they can see or not see, but they're always, it's like they're always connected to higher spirits that are helping these guys on their missions. So there is no one's ever left alone. The spirit world, under the leadership of Jesus Christ, sends these people on these missions for them to be successful. They may not be perfect or do everything perfect, but it's all a part of an education process for them to learn as they're doing. And therefore they're always helping. But so there's no such thing as distance in the spirit world. What they say is there's presence or absence. And so a spirit can will himself, a higher spirit can will himself to be right next to Franchezzo if he wants to immediately. But he doesn't have to. He can also communicate my thought. And that way he can inspire, let's say Franchezzo or his friend, this faithful companion. He can inspire by talking directly to his mind. He can send images to his mind. So these people, this is very complex. It's like this application, this simulation that is complex beyond our wildest imagination. Okay. As he spoke, he moved away, and the dark spirits drew near to me with every gesture of friendliness. I thought it well to respond with politeness, though in my heart I felt the most violent repugnance to their company. They were so repulsive looking, so horrible in their wicked, leering ugliness. One touched me on the shoulder as I turned to him with a dim sense of having seen him before. He laughed, a wild, horrid laugh, and cried out, "I held thee, friend, whom I doubts not so well remember me as I do thee, though it was upon the earth plane we met before. I, as well as others, had thought hard to be of service to thee, only thou wouldst have none of our help, and played us, methinks, but a scurvy trick instead. None the less for this, we who are as lambs, didst thou know us, have forgiven thee." Another drew near me, leering in my face with a smile perfectly diabolical, and said, "So ho, you are here after all, friend, in this nice land with us. Then surely you must have done something to merit the distinction. Say, whom have you killed or caused to be killed? For none are here who cannot claim at least one slain by them, while many of us can boast of a procession as long as the ghosts that appeared to Macbeth and others again. Our most distinguished citizens count their slain by hundreds. Did you kill that one after all? Ah ha ha!" And he broke in such a wild, horrible peal of laughter that I turned to fly for them. For like a flash had come across my mind the memory of that time when I, too, could have been almost a murderer. And I recognized in these horrible beings those who had surrounded me and counseled me how to fulfill my desire, how to wreak my vengeance, even though no earthly form was still mine. I recoiled from them, but they had no thought to let me go. I was here, drawn down as they had hoped at last, and they thought to keep me with them that I might afford them some sport, and they might avenge themselves upon me for their former defeat. I read in their minds this thought, though outwardly they were crowding around me with every protestation of hearty friendliness. For a moment I was at a loss what to do. Then I resolved to go with them and see what they intended, watching at the same time for the first opportunity to free myself from them. I therefore suffered to take me by an arm each, and we proceeded towards a large house on one side of the square, which they said was theirs, and where they would have the pleasure of introducing me to their friends. Faithful friend passed close to us and looked at me and pressed the warning: "Consent to go, but beware of entering into any of their enjoyments, or allowing your mind to be dragged down to the levels of theirs." We entered and passed up a wide staircase of gray stone, which, like all things here, bore the marks and stains of shame and crime. The broad steps were broken and imperfect, with holes here and there large enough, some of them, to let a man through into the black dungeon-like depth beneath. As we passed up, I felt one of them give me a sly push, just as we were stepping over one of these, and had I not been watching for some such trick, I might have been tripped up and pushed in. As it was, I simply drew aside, and my two officious companions narrowly escaped tumbling in himself, whereat the rest of us all laughed, and he scowled savagely at me. I recognized him just then as the one whose hand had been shriveled and the silver ring of fire drawn around my darling on the occasion when her love had drawn me to her and saved me from yielding to these dark fiends. This spirit held out his hand carefully hidden under his black cloak, yet I could see through it, and I beheld the shriveled arm and hand, and I knew then that I might indeed beware of its owner. At the top of the staircase, we passed into a large, magnificent room, lighted up by a glare of fire and hung around with dark draperies, which were in perfect rags and tatters, and all splashed with crimson stains of wet blood, as though this had been the scene of not one but many murders. Around the rooms were placed ghostly phantoms of ancient furniture, ragged, dirty, and defaced, yet retaining in them a semblance to an earthly apartment of such great pretensions to splendor. The room was filled with the spirits of men and women, such men, and alas, such women. They had lost all that they could ever have given them any claim to the charms and privileges of their sex. They were worse to look upon than the most degraded, bedraggled specimens to be seen in any earthly slum at night. Only in hell could women sink to such an awful degradation as these. These men were to the full as bad or even if possible worse, and words utterly fail me to describe them, were it indeed advisable to do so. They were eating, drinking, shouting, dancing, playing cards, and quarreling over them. In short, going on in such a way as the worst and lowest scenes of earthly dissipation can but faintly picture. I could see a faint reflection of the earthly lives of each, and knew that each and all of them, men and women alike, had been guilty, not only of shameless lies, but also of murder from one motive or another. On my left were one who had been a duchess in the days of the 16th century. So here's a woman. This book was written at the end of the beginning of the 20th century or the end of the 19th century. So she's been in there. She's been in there for the 16th century. She's been there 300 years. It hasn't wanted to get out. So this is people. Spirits tell us that some people have been into this the dark abyss for over 10,000 years. So some people are a little hard-headed to learn. And I beheld that in her history, she had, from jealousy and cupidity, poisoned no less than 6 persons. Besides her was a man who belonged to the same era and had caused several persons obnoxious to him to be assassinated by his bravos, and had moreover slain another with his own hand in a most treacherous manner during a quarrel. So I'll stop there because then we'll carry on. We'll carry on later the rest of this chapter. Hide this. So this is, I mean, it really, this is showing you how things can work. It's amazing that, here's this whole constructed environment and constructed by evil, or I also want to say evil, but say immature, primitive thoughts. And so you look at a group, kind of like Lord of the Flies, right? You look at a group of very immature kids, and they'd have something that would be kind of off, wouldn't work. They had no moral compass, right? And this is these people. These people are murderers, they're slanderers, they're thieves, they're criminals. And so they're all together, and they all, in their thoughts, bounce off of each other, and they reinforce each other, and they play the same memories over and over again. And therefore, this whole construct is, there's not just one purgatory or dark abyss. There's little groups as people within these different levels of that, just like different levels of heaven and different cities in heaven. But these people get together and they create these cities, and they create their little cliques. And some people feel comfortable in this horrible environment. This lady's been in there since the 16th century, 300, 400 years. That is amazing. And, but I've seen that. I've seen that during meetings where people know they're dead and know that, well, maybe they don't know. I don't know. But it's just they must realize that unless you want to look towards the light and be humble and try to accept the goodness, you're not going to be where you're not going to go to heaven. You're going to be in this very kind of bad atmosphere. In fact, in this one medium's meeting I was at, this spirit came through, and in the medium's meeting, I'm not a medium, I was at the back of the wall. There's always a trance medium, and then there's a consoling medium. And the consoling medium talks to the trance medium as the trance medium has a spirit voicing through them. And this spirit came through, and he just started laughing at us. He said, "Oh, you're so stupid. Don't follow Jesus Christ. He doesn't know what he's talking about." And then the consoling medium, well, I mean, don't you want to be in an environment full of love and beauty? And then he kind of thought that for a second. And he says, "Well, we have our own way of loving here." And it's probably true. I mean, humans adapt, right? And we're made that way to adapt. And he probably thinks that's love. It's kind of like in a completely dysfunctional family where you think something is love, but it's really not. But if that's, someday he'll get tired of that. Someday he'll want something better. And that's all one can hope for these people, is that someday that they'll find something better. And when they want something better, just like this spirit was brought to the meeting, because somewhere deep in his recesses, he really wanted to talk to us. But then he probably decided just to show how much smarter he was than we are, because he called us all fools and laughed at us, which is fine. But he was brought there for some reason, for him to see that, well, maybe these fools, they're kind of nice people. And then maybe that will, way down the road, make him reappraise his attitude. Then that's all what the spirit world wants. They just want us to grow and become better people, and really improve our character and personality, because that's all we have. When we die, we take nothing with us. All we have is our character and personality, and that's what we're here to change. In fact, being on the physical world is the best place to change that. So, if you'd like to learn more about Spiritism, I suggest you, first of all, read the Spirit's book. And, well, in fact, actually, I suggest you read this book first. This is less than 100 pages. I have it on my site. Let me bring this up. I have it on my site, and it's in PDF. You can download. It's also in French too, so you can download Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation. In fact, I have all my books on the. In fact, let me bring that up so you can see it. I have all my books on the right-hand navigation, and you can bring that up and you can download it, or you can also get it on Kindle, audiobooks, or paperback. Okay, so let me show this. I'll share it. Let me share a stream. So here's nwspiritism.com, and here's the right-hand side navigation. And you can say you can come subscribe to the YouTube channel, BitChute channel, Rumble. Please subscribe to the Substack page where I send articles out 3 times a week. Send them to you. You can also listen to us on Spotify, but here is, oops, gotta go over this way. Here's free PDF books. Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation, and then Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation in French, and then the problem is the solution in French. And then here's all my other books down here. So if you ever want to look at that, Spirit Realm, it's in Kindle, paperback, and audio format. So you can go through all of these. But I've got all sorts of information on this. And I talk about different things. I have different sections here. You go to reincarnation. I have lots of articles on reincarnation. I have whole books on reincarnation. But if you want to, you just pursue the articles. It doesn't cost anything, reincarnation articles. So I just want to give you that. so you can expand what you can see. It's all free. And but if you really, I think the best way of doing it is really read the Spiritism 101 on PDF, then read the Spirits book. I think that would help a lot. There we go. So here's the Spirits book. So after you read, you can get this in PDF. You can just look up Allan Kardec /PDF. You find all his books on PDF, but you can also, of course, buy that in Amazon or other places, other bookstores. To me, it's a revelation when I read that. That just answered my questions. Some people, it's a little bit heavy. It's 1,019 questions. The other thing I would recommend is to really get an idea of what the spirit realm is in the physical realm. The physical realm is a subset of the spirit realm, and what you are as a spirit, how you grow as a spirit, and then when you rise in heaven, you don't just get like a diploma. You become more powerful. You become more energy and less matter. And that's why when people see angels, they see this, they think there's wings, and there's this blurriness there. That's because as the higher and higher you go, the more you reflect the love of God. And therefore, when you're lower, you see this fuzziness. It's too bright. In fact, in different levels of heaven, you can't go higher than you are ready for, because if you try to go higher, everything's too bright. It's too uncomfortable for you. The same thing why these people are locked in this city in purgatory, is they can't go up higher because the law of affinity says, nah, you don't fit up there. And they're dense. And so they're restricted by where they can go. Anyway, I hope this helps. I hope people had interesting time. And please, if you can, share this video, tell everyone about it, help us spread Spiritism so people can really understand what's coming with the earth as we're moving from a planet of atonement to a planet of regeneration. And that we really, in order for us to help that, we all have to take part and lift our own internal harmonics and vibration. God bless.